All right. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being on this Zoom tonight, taking time out of your very busy day to be here. I know that our most precious and valuable resources. And so we just want to honor you in that tonight in just being here and choosing to be here tonight. So in this Zoom tonight, we're going to be talking about the inception of a very beautiful project that was really brought to me from a a heartfelt yes from God. And so I'm going to be talking about that a little bit more tonight. I'm going to be introducing one of my guest speakers and collaborator, Jen Taylor from. She's actually from the Chicago area, but she lives in Hollywood, Florida, Fort Lauderdale area now. And I wanted to introduce myself. If you do not know me, my name is Camille Ferguson. I am a regenerative health practitioner, clinical detox specialist, and clinical iridologist, and an herbalist. And the way I found this work was through my own journey with trauma. About 8.5 years ago, I was pregnant with my child, and we found out about 20 weeks into the pregnancy that the pregnancy wasn't vital. And that set in, that news was very traumatic for me. My husband and I had been trying to get pregnant for a couple of years. And, the doctors gave me that horrible news. And I remember one night I was at work. I used to wait tables, and I worked for a celebrity chef here in Chicago, really high volume place. And 20 weeks pregnant, was passing a plate out to one of my guests, and I felt my lower back go out. And by this point, I had been in high risk care. I'd been transferred from midwives to high risk care because of this devastating news that we had received. And that put me in a downward spiral with my health. I felt like I needed to get chiropractic care, do some other things out of the Western model, but my doctor assured me that the pain would go away after the baby was born. Well, fast forward about 3 more months, we ended up losing the baby at 32 weeks gestation. His name was Destin E. So Destiny. And my prayer after he was born, well, actually, the Lord led me to Romans 8:28 through 31, that he was predestined for and to make the way for many brethren. And so that was really a comfort to me. And during that time, I was really praying to be out of this chronic pain. I had been taking ibuprofen every day just to get through the day. I was taking about 2,000 milligrams. And I was able to conceive this little guy. This is my rainbow baby, Dace, about 11 months after we lost little Destin. And during that journey of um, of recovery, I found regenerative health, and it was the solution that actually ultimately led me to healing in my body and repair from chronic pain and inflammation. And within just a couple of days of implementing some amazing nutrition and starting to change the internal terrain in my body and my internal chemistry, I found myself out of chronic pain within just 2 days. So that's a little bit about me. I just went on this path to find truth, and I eventually attended the Institute of Regenerative Health, which is led by Carrie Drinkwine. She's an amazing woman, and the Institute of Regenerative Health is the world's leading school for holistic wellness professional training. So that's a little bit more about me, and I want to turn it over to Jen now to hear a little bit more from her about her story, and then we'll tell you the inception and go into some of the nuts and bolts here.
Well, thanks, Camille. That's an amazing story. I'm a licensed clinical professional counselor. I'm a somatic practitioner. And I think I would say I've always been passionate about learning and growing and wellness. And probably the reason is because I grew up in a pretty toxic household. People they didn't think outside the box. They didn't really think about working on themselves. And so I think I learned what I didn't want to do. And when I got into college, I started over exercising. I started overdoing everything. And I'm pretty sure that I was burning my adrenals out all through my 20s. I got into long distance biking. I got into triathlons. I got into, a lot of healthy things, but I was doing because I had chronic stress and I didn't know it. I was going to counseling. I was getting help for a lot of anxiety and depression that I was going through, but it wasn't until the death of my grandmother in my late 20s, early 30s that I really started to seek the Lord and come back in the direction of slowing things down and finding out who I was. After I had my kids in my early to mid 30s, my body just tanked. I had just burned myself out. I was in fight or flight constantly, and I didn't know what that was back then. I didn't have the somatic training until years later. But once I started just burning out, I started going to all kinds of, alternative holistic practitioners. I did acupuncture, I did massage, you name it, I was doing it. I was doing chiropractic, and it all helped to some extent, but I was still binging on sugar. I was still over exercising. I was just overdoing everything. And I was exhausted being a young mom. In my 40s, we decided to adopt two older kids. So they were 5 and 10. And as you can imagine, adopted kids come with a lot of baggage. They come with a lot of trauma. And so my life was turned upside down, and I thought I could save these kids and, just love them into recovery, but it didn't work out that way. So I was dealing with a whole host of other traumas, which put me into an even greater state of fight and flight. And even though I was regulating myself through a lot of the somatic things that I had learned, because I've been doing that for a really long time, but it wasn't enough. And so I began to seek out more holistic, integrative type medicine. And we were chipping away at the surface, but it wasn't getting at the underlying type of symptoms. So about 3 years ago, I was seeing my chiropractor, and I was able to get some relief because I had so much inflammation in my body because of stress, because of food sensitivities. And so I began to change my lifestyle even a little bit more. I began to let go of a lot of foods that were inflammatory. And fast forward to now, meeting Camille, I had really been praying that I would be able to, when I came down to Florida, get back into some more integrative medicine because I had been out of it for about a year. And my body has, seemingly moved into what we would call perimenopause overload. I came down here in the middle of the summer last year in the heat, 95-degree heat, and I was having hot flashes like you wouldn't believe, sleep deprived, the whole 9 yards. And I was looking for some relief. I just thought, is this what menopause is going to be like? How am I going to withstand this and deal with all the hormones? I started gaining weight this past year in the middle, which that's not been a part of my repertoire because I'm into fitness and health and all that. And I'm like, what is going on, Lord? And so I had just been praying about it. And then I met Camille, and we've started doing some things in the past week, and I'm already feeling better and feeling hopeful. So I'm excited to be on this journey with Camille and whoever wants to jump on the train with us. And we're going to talk about how we met and all that, but that's kind of where I'm at.
So thanks for sharing, Jen. It's just incredible how things align. And so I want to talk a little bit about how this project was birthed. So I remember standing at my kitchen sink doing dishes, and I was listening to a prayer call. Jen and I both follow Jennifer LeClaire. She's an apostle, and she really is gifted in prayer and intercessory and spiritual warfare. And that's something that I just really love. And she had announced that there was going to be a prayer boot camp coming up on January 11th in Fort Lauderdale. And if you guys know me, you know that I want to be in Florida. I want to move to Florida. This is one of my big dreams. And I was like, okay. And so I've heard, her talk about these classes that she does. And immediately I got a full body yes. Typically I don't. I'm like, oh, I don't think that's for me. But right there, I just heard, go, you're going. And so a couple days later, I booked my ticket, and I'm not into New Age or anything like that, or like numerology. And I know that, some people find a lot of value and insight to that. And I just don't, it doesn't resonate with me, but there was an interesting pattern that kept showing up prior to this trip to Florida and even afterwards, and then continually. The numbers 111, 111, just sequences of one. And I was like, what is that, God? Like, what are you trying to tell me here? And I didn't pay too much attention to it, but it was enough to just get my attention. And I realized that the day that I was at the prayer boot camp when I met Jen, it was January 11th, so 111. And I met Jen standing in the line to the women's bathroom. And if you know me, I'm kind of a hippie chick. I grew up in Colorado. I grew up riding my bike. I grew up backpacking, fly fishing, skiing. I love the beach and I love to be comfortable, and I love Birkenstocks. So Jen was wearing these gorgeous pair of turquoise Birkenstocks, and all I said was, I like your shoes. We hit it off, and after the prayer conference, just started talking more and just thought, well, it'd be cool to collaborate sometime. Like she was offering a lot of things that that I feel that I need in my life, and this work of releasing trauma from the body. I've had a lot of trauma in my life, and I think a lot of us have. And, you know, with my own journey with losing my pregnancy, I realized that trauma does store in the body. And after that, you know what, I went home back to Chicago and didn't really think much of our meeting or anything. But then one morning I was praying and I just got this full download. And I heard that I want you to build a program. It's going to be called Rejoice and Regenerate. I want you to do it with Jen Taylor. And the reason why this is happening is because my daughters are sick from emotional trauma, and it is manifested in their body. And they're so focused on that they're not turning to me. And I want them to be set free. And I want you to reach out to her. You guys are going to do this project. And I was like, okay. And I'm going to turn it over to Jen because she had a very reaffirming and confirming yes to this collaboration.
Yeah, I mean, when she told me this, I started crying because it was confirmation for me that I think we needed each other, and that we were going to bring some options to some other women who were feeling really stuck. Because I know that, you know, like many of you who may feel stuck, I've been there through a lot of my life, and I never had anybody walking me through these kinds of things. I walked myself through a lot of it. I had support, but I feel like I want to provide things to give people relief now so they don't have to wait 20 more years. So they don't have to, their kids don't have to go through these kinds of things, you know, that I know I've gone through. And I only gave you the very short snippet of my story. There's way more. If you sign up for the seminar, I'll talk about some of my trauma history, because it's pretty crazy. So the short version, though, is that this was confirmation that I think we could definitely allow God to work through us to help a lot of women to not only have freedom from the things that they need freedom from, but also to get closer to God.
Yes, amen. Well, let's get into some of the nuts and bolts. We do want to honor your time. So we're going to be sharing for maybe about 20 minutes, and then we'll open up for questions at the end. And we will have you out by 6:30, so right on the dot. So I wanted to talk tonight about some of the principles of regenerative health and why this is foundational to human health. This is a pioneering field. Most people have not heard of regenerative health, and it's through Carrie Drinkwine's own experience with healing from 3 autoimmune diseases, unexplained infertility, that there was, you know, the generation of this style of healing. And it really comes down to the basics and how our body is created. And so in regenerative health, some of the main things that we focus on are elimination pathways and our lymphatic system. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about the lymphatic system tonight. I'm also going to be talking about gut health and how you can improve gut health, as well as the adrenal glands and how they are connected to trauma in the body. And then Jen is going to be providing some really tangible tools that you can walk away with from this Zoom on how to safely release trauma from the body. And she'll be sharing a little bit more too. So basically we've got two types of fluid in our body. We've got our blood and we've got our lymphatic system. And our body is made up of approximately 70 trillion cells. So the blood feeds our tissues, glands, and organs. Every bite that we eat becomes cellular nutrition. And I like to look at the blood as like the kitchen of our body. So whatever we're eating is going into that kitchen. And then the lymphatic system is an interstitial tissue. So what that means, if you can kind of visualize it is a tissue that flows through all of your tissues, glands, and organs, and it collects cellular waste. So just like we eat and poop, our cells eat and poop, and that lymphatic system is more of like the trash or like the sewer system of the body. So unlike the blood that has a pump, it moves, we've got the lungs that help move the blood, the heart moves the blood. The lymph does not have any way of moving other than physical movement, temperature changes, diet helps to move our lymphatic system. And our lymphatic system, it requires a release. You have to be taking out that trash on a consistent basis. So this is where we get into our elimination pathways. The lymphatic system dumps about 30% of its cellular waste into our bowels. A lot of people are not moving their bowels on a consistent basis, and we're starting to see things back up into the system. The lymph also eliminates quite a bit of waste from the kidneys. Most people do not have lymphatic waste filtering out of their kidneys. So that's a big piece of regenerative health, is looking at what are the kidneys doing? Is there cellular waste coming out in the urine? We also have our lungs and we have our skin. We can actually eliminate 70% of our cellular waste through our breath. So breath work is, it's a free tool that you can do. One type that I really like is called box breathing. So you can look up a simple YouTube video about box breathing, but it's basically a cycle of 4. You hold for 4, or breathe for 4, hold for 4, release for 4, hold for 4, doing this box pattern. It's really simple. And that's a nice way that you can eliminate toxins from the body. So the lymphatic system is key to our immune health. And when it comes to chronic conditions in the body, what happens is the lymph gets backed up. If you're not eliminating, if you're not, removing the cellular waste on a consistent basis, the lymph will get backed up, and that backup will start to flow into the blood. And then you start to have things like autoimmune disease show up. You start to see inflammatory responses in the body, pain, poor gut health, poor digestion, brain fog, weight, like unexplained weight gain, inability to fight infection in the body. All of these things are contributed to the lymphatic system. So the lymphatic system is a high focus in regenerative health, and we really want to make sure that your body is eliminating waste properly. The next thing I want to talk about is our gut health and how this is related to our lymphatic health also. So gut health it's foundational to human health. You may have heard the term the second brain. And the reason why people say that is because we actually have 9 signals that go from the gut to the brain. The vagus nerve that is at the base of our brain goes all the way through the spinal cord down into the gut. And so the gut is in charge of a major communication happening within the body. The gut also houses our immune system and is also a regulator for our hormone production. Things like serotonin and dopamine, these are all made in the gut. And so when our gut is down, our gut is congested, then we start to see things like anxiety and depression show up. And that's like, you can go take a medication for that, but that's not really getting to the root. So in regenerative health, we're really getting to the root. We're peeling back layers and layers and layers and understanding, okay, why is, say, why are you dealing with anxiety? So we look at that communication pathway. And the gut is in charge of what's called the it's HPA axis is one of the main communicators. So essentially, the gut is going to be sending signals up to the brain, primarily our pituitary gland, which is it's like the master gland of the body. It's kind of like the CEO or the master computer chip. And the pituitary gland is in charge of sending signals to all of our endocrine system. And our endocrine system is in charge of hormone regulation. The other aspect of our gut that's really important that a lot of people don't realize is most people are walking around with leaky gut. And the reason why this happens is because most people are not eating a 100% organic diet. They're doing improper food combining and consuming highly processed foods, high meat diets. These kind of things will cause leaky gut and what happens is our gut it's a permeable membrane, but it has these tight junctions that hold it together to keep waste from flowing out. The waste needs to be going out, but most people have a broken gut and that waste is starting to flow into the bloodstream. Then the lymphatic system has to come in and try to clean things up. When there's an overburden in the body, then we start to see things like parasites come in to start to clean up that extra waste. And so when we have parasites, overgrowth of parasites can lead to autoimmune disease, lead to cancer, lead to exasperated health problems. So you can see the importance that I'm going to here, and want to kind of go back up to these communication pathways in the body that go up to the brain. So we talked about the endocrine system just a little bit, but some of those main glands that are really important connected to human health is our pineal gland. That's in charge of our sleep regulation, our thyroid. It's in charge of our metabolism, our mood, our weight management, and so much more. It's even in charge of our hormone production for those happy hormones. When people have low functioning thyroid, they oftentimes deal with depression. Our parathyroid gland is in charge of our calcium utilization. So it will help to dictate the body of how much calcium is needed to maintain the internal terrain of the body. Our pancreas is also in the endocrine system, and it has two functions. It secretes insulin for sugar regulation and transport of glucose into the liver. And the pancreas is also in charge of our healthy digestive enzymes. So it helps to break down our food effectively. And then the adrenal glands. The adrenal glands are going to be a really major system when it comes to trauma in the body. And Jen had talked about being in fight or flight all the time. And so what happens when we are in a traumatic situation, say you had a really hard upbringing as a child and you were constantly put down or yelled at or spanked or whatever it is. Nobody had a perfect childhood, but a lot of the times trauma starts in childhood. Maybe you were in a terrible accident and your body never got out of that stage of fight or flight. For me, it was the loss of an infant. Grief can be a traumatic experience for people. Divorce, even moving, all of these things can cause trauma to set into the body. And what happens when the body is in a state of trauma is the adrenal glands will secrete a hormone called cortisol. And cortisol is a stress response hormone that actually puts the body into safety. But when we have high levels of cortisol in the body, then we have this imbalance. We start to see weight gain. We start to see chronic stress build up. We also start to see our immune system to go down when we're in this state or fight or flight all the time. Some of the other functions of the adrenal glands is it actually sends signal to regulate our heartbeat, our bowel movements, break down sugars for digestion. It's part of secreting healthy hormones for an acute inflammation response. And when the adrenals are down and there's, improper hormones being secreted to essentially put out a fire in the body, then you start to have this chronic inflammation, and that's really the root of disease. The adrenal glands are also in charge of our hormone production, including our reproductive health, and they help to regulate our nervous system. The adrenal glands function on minerals. And so the next thing I'm going to talk about here is how we get proper minerals to support our adrenal glands. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about food and the food system and the structure of food and food chemistry. So basically we have two types of chemistry. We have an alkaline side of chemistry, and we have an acid side of chemistry. There's really no in between. It's black and white. And foods actually have a chemistry. So let's just think of like the standard American diet. The standard American diet is highly processed, it's meat focused, animal focused, lots of stimulants, alcohol, caffeine, complex carbohydrates, improper food combining. And what this does is it leaves behind an acid. It's an acid ash. So when we break down our food, there's going to be a residual byproduct of that food breakdown. And it's when we are consuming high acid forming foods, the byproduct of that is sulfur, chlorine, and phosphorus. These are all very corrosive minerals. And when the body is in a more acid state, what is going to happen is the body, because it's so brilliant, is it's going to start using things like fat. It's going to increase fat production, cholesterol production, and it's going to use calcium. And the calcium, it actually gets pulled from the bones and pulled from the connective tissue. And this, I like to look at it as like a fire extinguisher. Calcium, it's the body will just give it up like candy at Halloween. And I like to look at it as this fire extinguisher, really putting out this fire within the body. And that's where we really start to see imbalance come in, is when the body is in this hot, acidic state. Now, on the flip side of that, we have your more cooling foods, your alkaline forming foods. So these are going to be your fresh fruits, your fresh vegetables, your fresh herbs, things like superfoods. All of these things are going to leave behind more of an alkaline ash. And that those ashes are full of minerals. So things like calcium, potassium, magnesium. And I like to look at these as catalysts for communication. So the adrenal glands thrive and function on a high mineral load in the body. They need it to send out these signals. So you can think of these minerals as being like asphalt on the freeway, right? If we don't have that pavement for a smooth ride, it's going to be a bumpy transport of these minerals to the said gland, say the heart. The heart's not going to beat effectively if it doesn't have the proper amount of minerals. So hopefully you guys are all following me here. The next thing I kind of want to segue into is what kind of foods and what can you do to help support the adrenal glands, help to support your lymphatic system, and help to support your gut to be in better health. So proper food combining is a huge piece of this. A couple of just simple tips that you can use right away with your diet is consuming fruit first and consuming fruit alone. Now, fruit does not require much to digest. It just needs the saliva from our mouth and some oxygen, and it turns into a simple sugar that feeds our cells immediately. It gives us immediate energy, and it helps actually cleanse the cells as well. So fruit first and always alone, because it digests in about 20 to 30 minutes. So if you eat, say, a piece of watermelon after you go to a barbecue and you just had a burger and, hot dog or whatever, and then you eat that watermelon on top of that, you're going to start to see fermentation happen, because those other foods take a very long time to digest. So that's going to be one rule that you want to follow, is proper food combining, eating your fruit first and eating it alone. And then when you're eating proteins, you don't want to combine them with starches. You want to make sure you're combining them with greens. If you're going to be consuming starches, you want to combine those with vegetables. So those are just a couple of tips that you can do right away to start implementing better gut health and better digestion. And then, like I said, our adrenal glands function off of these minerals. And let's see, where am I going? So when it comes to really supporting the adrenal glands and making sure that we have a clean lymphatic system and a healthy gut, is going to be your fresh fruits, your fresh vegetables, like I said. And these are going to provide the minerals for you. They're going to be easier on digestion. Fruit takes about 30 minutes to digest. Vegetables take about 2 to 4 hours. Your meats, your dairies, your animal proteins, your complex carbohydrates, these are all going to take between 17 and 36 hours to digest, and they require cortisol to be secreted to help break down those sugars in those foods. So I think that that's mostly what I have for you on my end. And let me just double check my notes here and make sure that I covered what I wanted to cover. Yeah, and so when it comes to improving your health, just increasing your fresh fruits and vegetables is going to help to cool the internal terrain of the body down, and also keep the lymphatic system clean and help to increase proper elimination in our digestive system. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you, Jen. You can bring us into a place of peace after receiving all that information and let it kind of integrate.
Well, I appreciate all that. I've definitely dealt with all the things you've talked about, and most of the clients that I see, by the time people come to see me, they're well into an inflammatory phase of their life, so to speak. It's probably a whole host of things, but trauma can look very, very different. I look through an attachment lens also. So one thing that I wanted to talk a little bit about is just, building secure attachment versus insecure attachment. And a lot of times, as I was saying earlier, we can have early developmental trauma that can set our body up for some of these physical conditions that happen later. Because if we don't deal with the emotional things that are happening, we're going to actually have some kind of disease forming in our system, whether it's arthritis, whether it's back pain, whether it's kidney problems, headaches, chronic problems in our body. Actually, aging is not supposed to bring on a host of more problems. It's actually usually due to unresolved issues, whether we haven't dealt with grief that happened. It could have been decades ago. It could have been yesterday, whether it was a car accident. I deal with a lot of people who have had accidents or car accidents, and a lot of times these little fender bender type things actually can be more traumatic in the nervous system than something actually a lot more, what we would consider more serious. So when people say, well, I just had a fender bender, I'm always like, well, that might be something we need to work through, because what happens is the body will hold on to all that stress and cortisol. Camille did a fantastic job of explaining, just how the nervous system actually works. And so my goal when I'm working with people is always to help people to learn to regulate their nervous system. So it's not what's happened to us in our life, it's actually our nervous system response to what's happened. And a lot of times the reason that we are dealing with chronic stress is because things are unresolved because we didn't have a safe witness to help hold space so that we could go back into rest and digest. So if anybody, has gone through, let's say, some kind of an accident or an injury, maybe you stubbed your toe the other day, and it doesn't sound like a big deal, but it hurts a lot, right? Well, if we keep going on with our day and we don't actually attend to the pain that we're feeling in our toe, what happens is that energy, that adrenaline, that cortisol gets stored in the system. And the more, as you can imagine, that was a tiny example, but imagine a lifetime from conception on, I'm 53. So whatever age you are, imagine from conception on that you have little amounts of stored energy from all these different incidents that you never got to just sit with the pain. Someone didn't come around you. Now, if you stubbed your toe as a kid, probably someone did come around and say, oh, let me kiss the boo-boo. But for a lot of things, our society tells us just keep moving. just keep working, keep going. If you're a mom like I am, I have 4 kids. A lot of times and I've got 4 dogs, a lot of times someone's always needing something. And so what happens is we don't always have time to sit with what's happening. We don't always have time to sit with the pain that we're dealing with. And we might not even know that we have pain. We all have blind spots. So there's no shame and there's no judgment. There's no condemnation in what I'm saying, because I had so many blind spots. And there's a reason why we have that. Our nervous system only has so much capacity to actually sit with and hold things in the present. So guess what happens if we have too much and our cup is overflowing? Well, some of it gets put in the closet. It gets compartmentalized or fragmented, as we would say in the somatic world. And so oftentimes I'm working with different parts of people. I'm working with younger parts. We're working with child parts to help them to heal so that the whole self can become more integrated. And that's also what people notice when they start to feel more freedom, is they're integrating more because they're feeling more regulated. So our goal in this program is to also teach people how to come into what we call the window of tolerance. We're going to be doing some nervous system exercises to help our system to come back into rest and digest more often, to notice the waves coming up throughout the day and letting the waves settle, to slow things down so that our adult selves can sit with the younger parts if they need to, or just we can sit with ourselves and be the safe witness to say, it's okay. We can take a moment here and just let the waves settle. And then what happens is the body actually can begin to relax. That little amygdala, which is like the smoke detector of the brain, I like to call it, that signals danger. If you have a pet, it's the thing that tells the dog, the Amazon man is here. He's down the street, right? Be on alert. And so as we're coming back into rest and digest, we might be noticing we're taking spontaneous breaths, or it's a little bit deeper breath, or we're burping, we're passing gas. And if we're sitting with another person, that person might be mirroring what we're doing. So when I'm sitting with people, I'm doing what we call co-regulation. My nervous system is helping the other person to regulate. And it's from an attachment standpoint, it's a developmental necessity that we have co-regulation when we're very, very young, before the age of about 1.5 years. Because if we don't have a caregiver who's attending to us consistently and regularly, then what happens is the baby goes into great amounts of distress. So secure attachment is built by a competent caregiver who's attuned, who, when the baby cries, they will respond to them and meet their need. And then the baby can go back to sleep. The baby cries again, the caregiver responds, meets the need, the baby can go back to sleep. So over and over and over, this is practiced. This is what builds secure attachment. Now, insecure attachment, avoidant attachment, disorganized attachment are the other more insecure styles, which most people have some degree of with certain people. It can be different. You might have a different attachment style with different people depending on your upbringing. But the course of attachment is actually built before the first year of life. And so if you didn't get that consistency, you might have more of an anxious attachment style. And so perhaps your nervous system is always trying to please people. You're trying to please people because your nervous system is on high alert, because the only way you feel safe is to check in and do things for people and make sure everybody else is okay. But guess what happens? And I did this my whole life, until I started learning how to regulate more. I did this for a number of decades. And then I began to see what the stress of always being a yes person or always wanting to please other people was doing to my insides. And, now I'm dealing with lymphatic backup and liver backup, which is, kind of what Camille is assessing in me. So over time, that's what can happen. Hormone imbalances. I can deal with the stress part pretty decently because I have the tools. But the other stuff, it's tricky. So we really need, I think, a community of support around us. We can't just use one modality. We really need body, mind, and spirit connected. So that's why we're partnering. So one thing that I would like to teach you today is one of the things that I begin to do with people from a foundational standpoint. And to be able to heal, we need to begin to feel a felt sense of relative safety. And when I say relative, what that means is it's relative to the here and now. So we all are sitting in the spaces that we're in, and we may be feeling some degree of relative safety. Now, if we were to go out onto the street or, drive 30 minutes to go somewhere to an appointment, relative safety would look different if we left where we are. So it's really just what's happening in the here and now. And we're trying to help our nervous system to come back into the present tense, because the more present we are, the more safe we're going to feel. And it's never going to be 100%. But I'd like to do a little exercise with you if you're willing. If you want to opt out, that's totally fine. And so one thing that I like to offer to people is always the power of choice, because when we have agency in our adult selves, we feel very empowered, and our nervous system likes that. We're more in the window of tolerance. We're more able to regulate. When we don't feel like we have choices, then we're immediately going to begin to go into some degree of a threat response. Either we're going to go into that high state of arousal, like fight or flight, or we might be going into what we call more of a freeze state, or we might be going into a people-pleasing state. And none of those are right or wrong. They're all adaptive strategies. They're very actually clever and creative the way God designed us so that we could survive. And that's why we're all sitting here today. If we didn't have our adaptive management strategies, we wouldn't be sitting here today breathing. And you wouldn't have signed up to even begin to talk about this sort of thing. So I'd just like to invite you, if you're willing, to sit in your chair comfortably and maybe just begin to move your shoulders a little bit. So one of the ways that we know we're actually not in freeze, or we're actually mobile, which can create a sense of safety, is to just begin to move a little part of your body. Maybe move your toes. Just begin to move like your fingers. You can move your legs a little bit, but just some part of your body. You might be able to move your back a little bit. And just notice what begins to happen with your breath. And if you're not very connected with your body, that's okay, because most people are not. And it's actually sometimes safer to not be connected to your body. So again, there's no right or wrong. You can't possibly mess up what we're doing. This is just simply an experiential, very personal exercise, relative to yourself. And as you're sitting there, I would just like to begin to invite you to notice the door. Find your windows, just kind of let your neck move a little bit, and just look around your space and notice that if you needed to get out right now, you could move towards the door. So I'm looking at my door. There's a window, there's a door behind me. And as we begin to see our escape route, there may be something in you that starts to settle. As you feel the space around you, we have lots of time. There's no urgency. You can just begin to notice what's happening with your legs. Maybe kind of feeling the chair underneath you. And again, planting your feet. If you needed to get out right now, and I'm talking to your nervous system, so it might be like a weird thing what I'm saying, but if you needed to get out right now, your legs could essentially stand up and you could go to the door. So that's kind of what we want to allow our system to notice, is there's freedom, is we have agency here. You can kind of feel your arms. So these are the things that help us to be more mobile. And in a lot of situations with trauma, it's like things happen too quickly, they happen without warning, and they happen too intensely. That's actually the sort of the essence of how our nervous system perceives overwhelm. And so what we're doing is we're slowing things down, we're allowing for time, we're allowing for options, and we're moving in like very titrated or tiny amounts. When I work with people, I don't invite them to come in and tell me all their worst case scenarios, because one, it's too much, and two, no healing can actually occur if you're in a state of threat. So the work that we're going to be doing in this program, the reason we're going to teach some of these skills as regulation is because the healing that's going to come from the inside needs to be done when our system is in more of a parasympathetic state, or a state of rest and digest or safety. It's actually going to be a lot quicker if we're in that state. If we're in a very, very high arousal state, the healing is going to take longer. It's going to be difficult. So that's my goal whenever I'm working with people, is to always help them to find these moments of relative safety. So when we have transitions, now as you're going out, a little bit later here and about your day or your evening, what's going to happen is you're going to notice just naturally you're making a little more energy to move around. And so we're going to just kind of call that a wave. You can feel the wave going up. And then as you get situated in, your next transition, then it might be good to just take a little pause and just allow, sort of like a snow globe, you can allow the wave to settle. And that gives the nervous system time to, again, come back to that state of potentially rest and digest, but a state of, just noticing a little more relative safety. So hopefully that makes sense. And then throughout your day, you can be tracking your system as the waves go up and down. Because what we don't want is we don't want to have like a wave go up and then another wave and then another wave and another wave without being able to settle. Again, that's what puts us out of that window of tolerance. That's what puts us in that state of threat once again. So the more we can tune in and take these moments and find relative safety, maybe even just looking around your room right now just for a moment, and maybe there's a color that you like. Maybe there's something that you can see that you're like, I'm kind of fond of that, So orienting to things that are pleasurable with our senses, maybe even orienting to a person that you find to be safe or comforting, an animal or a pet. So those can be good things to do when you're at work or you're out and about. Again, you can find relative safety on the outside by looking at these sorts of things, but also on the inside, you can say, where are my arms and legs? Okay, I can find my arms and legs. I can find my feet. Okay, I know I have agency. So that's just kind of a simple exercise that you might want to try and just see what happens.
Awesome. Thank you, Jen, for sharing that. I think these kind of tools are so important, because when we do get into any kind of traumatic situation, being able to regulate after it happens is so important. And that's what can help to release it from the body. So thank you for that. I hope that that's valuable to you guys and that you can, use that in your, your daily life. So kind of moving on here, I want to talk a little bit more about rejoice and regenerate. So rejoice and regenerate, as you know, was this seed planted and it's getting ready to take fruit. And what we're going to be doing is Jen and I are going to be launching a 20-week group program. And so we're going to be working in a really cohesive way to offer you all a way to not only repair and reverse and regenerate your body, focus on some of these principles of regenerative health, but simultaneously release trauma from the body. And what I find in my practice is that for most clients, we go through all of the physical things, like all of the dietary protocols, all the herbs, all of the things, but then there can be a plateau. And that plateau happens because there is there's some kind of emotional manifestation in the cells that hasn't been released. And as I start to talk to people, it's usually related to trauma. And so I want, in this program, we're going to be covering the body in a very holistic way. So the physical as well as the emotional. And then the end result of this is a healed, whole woman that is, serving in her greatest purpose, repaired and healed, right? And restored. And so the reason why this is different is because of this pioneering field of regenerative health and this integration that we'll be offering. And so, there's a lot of programs out there. Maybe you've done things in the past and you've done maybe like quick fix diets and they just have never worked. They haven't been sustainable for you. Or you've been frustrated with weight fluctuations, lacking confidence, and feeling uncomfortable in your skin. Maybe you feel overwhelmed and confused by conflicting dietary advice. There's a lot out there. Maybe you feel overwhelmed, like you've tried everything and you still don't have the answers. Maybe you're struggling with stress and anxiety or low self-esteem, false beliefs about yourself, lacking confidence, and just overwhelmed in general. And you can't understand what is going on in your body. So in this 20-week group program, we are going to be navigating along with you, tracking with you with a very clear and research-based approach to health and nutrition. You will be gaining confidence and comfort through a supportive wellness journey from both Jen and myself. You'll be achieving steady and manageable weight and empowerment and the tools to change your life and just have this sustainable lifestyle moving forward. We'll be teaching you how to embrace a balanced, natural approach that brings lasting results. And then you'll be gaining a deeper and wiser connection to your body, and just gain more strength and a more magnetic and authentic, who you are authentically created to be, that authentic presence in the world. Not only those things, but improved digestion, healthy weight, sustainable energy, and a clear mind, and learning these tactical tools on how to regulate your nervous system. So the program starts next Tuesday, April 15th, and we are going to have a private, inclusive place on Facebook, a Facebook group where you can connect with others. We'll be offering a once a week group meeting, and we'll be going through the fundamentals of regenerative health, and we'll be walking through that week by week. We'll also be learning some of these somatic therapy processes from Jen. We'll each be having our own, our own segment that we teach our guests, and question and answer support. And within this, some of the things that I'll be offering is I'll be offering extended office hours for question and answer outside of our weekly meeting. I will be offering a one-on-one appointment with my client. So when you come into this group, we'll be setting up a private appointment so I can get to know you more about your health and provide a beginner protocol for you. And that's a $200 value. Some other things that you'll be receiving in this is a live iridology analysis, so we can see in real time what's happening to the internal terrain of your body through the map of the iris. It's fascinating, and we'll be learning that together. And then I'll be helping to support you with a tailored assessment and protocol to meet your specific health needs. So if it's autoimmune, or under functioning thyroid, or maybe it's gut health, maybe it's nervous system dysregulation, I'll be providing you a very specialized, specific protocol for you. And throughout that, we're just going to be working together and going through this journey. And Jen, do you want me to just kind of continue with some of your points of what you'll be bringing? Is that okay? So I'll go ahead and I'll just continue because I've got the notes here in front of me. Sorry. So what Jen is going to be offering is also a one-on-one somatic healing session. She's going to be offering her expertise in the group. You're going to have the opportunity to work with both of us. We're both, sought after high impact coaches with a lot of value. With Jen, you'll be reclaiming your vitality, restore your power through the wisdom of your body, and some really tangible tools and education about releasing this trapped trauma that is stored from emotional suppression in the body. Some tactical tools on supporting your nervous system and nervous system regulation, and a strong, more authentic presence in the world. Jen has a background in deliverance ministry, as well as a Bible-based approach. So if that's something that resonates with you and you want that, those are things that we can also offer. Jen also has worked in the deliverance ministry as well. And so this program starts next Tuesday, and we have 3 different payment options for you. So we have a payment where you can pay everything at once. And if you register by the 11th, we're offering $200 off. And that comes down for this 20-week program. It's $19.95. And then you can also pay monthly. That's 30, I think it's $3.99 monthly, or you can even pay weekly. We really want to make this accessible for you so that you can experience this work. And so what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to put this in our chat thread here, the link to look at the page where you can find out more about the program. You can sign up for the program there as well. And then you will be getting a replay tomorrow from this call, as well as that link to sign up. So I want to go ahead and open it up for any questions at this point, and make sure that everybody feels fulfilled and nourished and satisfied after a Zoom here. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, and want to thank you all for being here tonight.